Throughout the centuries, there were men who took first steps down new roads, armed with nothing but their own vision. The great creators, the thinkers, the artists, the scientists, the inventors, stood alone against the men of their time. Every new thought was opposed, every new invention was denounced. But the men of unborrowed vision went ahead. They fought, they suffered, and they paid, but they won. No creator was prompted by a desire to please his brothers. His brothers hated the gift he offered. His truth was his only motive. His work was his only goal. His work, not those who used it. His creation, not the benefits others derived from it. The creation which gave form to his truth. He held his truth above all things and against all men. He went ahead, whether others agreed with him or not, with his integrity as his only banner. He served nothing and no one. He lived for himself. And only by living for himself was he able to achieve the things which are the glory of mankind. Such is the nature of achievement. The Creator stands on his own judgment. The parasite follows the opinions of others. The Creator thinks. The parasite copies. The Creator produces. The parasite loots. The Creator's concern is the conquest of nature. The parasite's concern is the conquest of man. The Creator requires independence. He neither serves nor rules. He deals with men by free exchange and voluntary choice. The parasite seeks power. He wants to bind all men together in common action and common slavery. He claims that man is only a tool for the use of others, that he must think as they think, act as they act, and live in selfless, joyless servitude to any need but his own. Look at history. Everything we have, every great achievement has come from the independent work of some independent mind. Every horror and destruction came from attempts to force men into a herd of brainless, soulless robots without personal rights, without personal ambition, without will, hope, or dignity. It is an ancient conflict. It has another name: the individual against the collective.
Blackdragon, podcast numero dos. Here we are again. That speech was, of course, the great speech given by Gary Cooper back in 1949. And of course, he didn't write the speech. He's just an actor. The speech was written by Ayn Rand. And it really has very little to do with what we're going to talk about today, but I don't care. I like the speech, so I shoved it in the front. So there you go. The next podcast I do, the next one coming up, which is going to be coming up shortly, I've got something really cool planned for the introduction. It won't be me, it's going to be somebody else. And I actually wanted to have it for this podcast, but schedules didn't work out. So then on the next podcast, the introduction is going to be so amazing. Your head will explode. Your pancreas will explode. It'll be awesome. It's been a while since I've done one of these, and I've been a little busy. About, year and a half, 2 years ago, I entered into a phase of my life where I'm going to be very, very busy and very, very focused for quite a while, at least 6 or 7 years. Very similar to my 20s. My 20s were a very focused time for me. I spent almost 100% of my time completely focused on my business and my career, really mostly my business. And then my 30s were busy and I was focused, but my 30s had a lot of transitional stuff going on. I had small kids at the time. And if you have kids, you know that having small children is somewhat time-consuming, even if you're a man. And then about halfway into my 30s, I had a little thing called a divorce. And a divorce will definitely take the wind out of some of your projects. A divorce will cause a slight delay in the things you want to get done in your life. And then right around the same time, actually about a year after my divorce, the U.S. economy collapsed, and so I had to stop and kind of deal with that. I was expecting the economy to collapse, but not in 2008. I was expecting it to happen in 2012, and it came 4 years early. So there you go. And then also in my 30s, I had to learn a new skill called seduction and open relationships, and that took a few years. So now that I'm in my 40s, officially, this year I turned 40, I can return to a more focused, steady pace, which is this pace that I like. The downside of that is I get very busy and sometimes things fall behind, including things like this podcast. But I'm here, we're here, it's all good, let's do it. So I'm going to tell you a story. This story is a true story. It happened quite a while ago, I would say about 10 years ago. I must have been about 30. Yeah, actually, that's about right. I was about 30. God, that means I was still married back then. Damn, we're going way back in time now. So I was scheduled to have a meeting with one of my clients at one of my clients' homes with a bunch of other clients. And this particular guy was an older guy. He was a wealthier guy. He was probably in his mid-60s or so, I would guess. Nice guy. He was a retired judge, and he was currently working part-time as a mediator arbitrator. And if you know what those kind of guys make, they make more money than you or I would make full-time by working working part-time. He probably worked about 20 hours a week and made a hell of a lot of money. So I'm driving out to his house, and he lived way out in the country, so it's quite a drive. And finally I see his driveway, and I pull in, and I see his beautiful home, and his beautiful driveway, and his beautiful acreage, and his beautiful trees. And I remember thinking to myself, damn, I can't wait to have a place like this. This would be so nice out in the country and the serenity and the peace. This is just great. I'm a big city guy, and I prefer cities, but I like to get away to the country often. It would be nice to have a place in the city and a place in the country. I'm working on it. But anyway, that's what I was thinking. Most guys, at least nowadays, when they see a house like that, they immediately assume something like, well, obviously this guy's a fucking rip-off artist. This guy's obviously a prick because the only way to make a lot of money like this is to rip people off and lie to people and do bad things and be an asshole, so what a prick. I tend to think a little differently. When I see someone who has something that I want, I immediately ask myself, how did this person do that, and how can I do the same thing? But I digress. I pull into the round in front of his house. He greets me at the door, big smile on his face, greets me very warmly. He's, again, a really nice guy. I like this guy a lot. Haven't seen him in a long time. I had gotten there, I don't remember why, I had gotten there about 30 minutes before anybody else. So I got there early for some reason. So he and I adjourn to his living room, and we sit on the couch, and we just start talking and relaxing and have a good time. And as we're talking, in walks the trophy wife. Oh yeah, the trophy wife. She saunters in like on a little cloud. She's a good 25 years younger than him. This is obviously the second wife. I would bet real money. I mean, I don't know this for sure, but I would bet real money this was not his first wife. I'm looking at her, and she's probably, I would guess, 40 years old. It's tough for me to gauge people's ages sometimes because people are looking so good as they get older these days. But anyway, I would guess about 40. She's gorgeous. She's Latina. As I recall, her face wasn't all that great, but her body was fantastic. It just clearly a trophy wife. She walks in, she gives me a quick nod and says hi, and then she turns to him and she starts screaming. I mean, not screaming, she starts screeching. She just starts bitching and whining and yelling at him about something stupid and trivial, I just got off the phone with Jackie, and she said that you said that we were going to have lunch with Dan next week at 11:30 on Tuesday, and I told you that I wasn't going to be ready until noon. So why did you tell her that? How many times? Just screeching and screeching. I'm sitting there cringing, being polite. Oh my God. I don't know how you married guys do this. I don't know how you do it. I have no idea how you do this. But anyway, she's screeching her head off at him, and he is being very beta male, very submissive, very AFC about it. He's like, oh, I'm sorry. Yes, you're right, honey. I'm sorry, honey. I won't do that. You're right. Well, I'll call her and tell her, and it's okay. She just goes on and on and on and on and on. Every guy listening to this, every guy who's been married or divorced or still married, doesn't matter, knows that screech. How many times do I have to tell you? I work so hard. Every guy who's been married knows that screech. Every guy who's been married is thinking, yep, that's the screech. Every guy who is listening to me right now, who has never lived with a woman for longer than about 3 years, is the opposite. He's thinking, Well, my girlfriend would never do that. When we get married, she'll never do that because she's a sweet little angel. And she's made out of sugar and spice and everything nice. I'm a smart guy. I know what I'm doing. I know how to scream. Yeah, why don't you go get married, move in with her, get monogamous, wait 3 years, and you call me and you tell me how that worked out, Superman. So anyway, she's screaming like a goddamn one-legged hyena. And eventually she turns around like a little hurricane. You know the old Bugs Bunny cartoons where you had the Tasmanian devil? He's like this big wolf-looking guy, and whenever he moves, he like spins around into a little tornado, and he like tornadoes out of the... That's what she did. She turns into a little tornado, and she kind of tornadoes out of the room. And I was very polite. I didn't say anything. None of my business. I just kept calm, and I just smiled, and he turned back to me, and we just kept talking like nothing happened. It was no big deal. So we talked for another few minutes, and we're having a great time. And after about 10 minutes, here she comes again. She blats right back in the room and starts bitching at him again. And once again, it's something very stupid, very trivial. Why did you put your coffee cup in the right sink? I've told you that dirty dishes go in the left sink. I've told you and told you and told you. How many times do I have to... And he's all like, yes, I'm sorry. You're right. Yes, I'm sorry, honey. And as all this is going down, again, I'm quiet, but I'm just sitting there cringing. I'm just cringing as if someone is scraping nails down a chalkboard. Shit, I was married back then. And at that point, at least at that point in my marriage, I'd been married several years, and even my wife at the time didn't throw drama at me like that. Certainly not in front of other people she barely even knew. And she was no angel, and even she didn't do that. Now, later in the marriage, she started pulling that shit. That's why I left. Novel concept. And of course, that decision was probably one of the top 3 best decisions I ever made in my entire life. Finally, Little Miss Perfect, Little Miss Shrews runs out of steam, at least temporarily, and she tornadoes back out of the room. So the guy turns back to me, and he has this sort of defeated, beta male look on his face, a look I see far too often from far too many men these days. Most of the men that I know personally are men who are married and have marriages very similar to this. And again, I don't want to say anything, I want to be polite, but he probably saw some kind of look on my face, I'm sure. And he looks at me and he says, well, she's definitely a firecracker, but she's kind of irreplaceable. And as soon as he said that, there was kind of this odd twist in my gut. I don't really know why. I forgot what I said to him, because we're going back 10 years now, but we talked a little longer. The other clients arrived, we had our meeting, and no big deal, and I drove home. And it was a long drive home, because like I said, he was way the hell out in the boonies. And on the drive home, I thought back to what he said about how she's kind of irreplaceable. And something really bothered me about that statement. I mean really bothered me. Even in my married, monogamous, semi-beta male AFC state back then, I could just tell in my gut there was something very, very wrong with that statement and that mindset and that attitude. And I couldn't really articulate why it bothered me. I just knew something was very wrong. Well, that was 10 years ago, and things have changed, and today I can be very clear about what was wrong with that statement. Let me ask you a question. He said his wife was irreplaceable, and that's why he had to put up with her bullshit abuse, right? So she's irreplaceable. She cannot be replaced. There's no other woman in the entire world who can fulfill her role as his lover and his wife and his life partner, right? What would happen if a few days after he told me that, God forbid, she got hit by a bus and got killed? I'm not wishing ill on anyone, of course. I'm just being hypothetical. What if she, a few days after that event, woke up in the morning, took a shower, and had a brain aneurysm and died? What would he have done? Well, obviously, he would have been devastated, and he would have a very shitty 6 months or 12 months or 18 months or whatever. Yes, that's very true. But what about after that? What would he have done? Think about it. What would he have done? Let me ask you this question. If you currently have a wife or a serious girlfriend, and tomorrow morning she had a heart attack and she died, what would you do once you got over the mourning period? Which, yes, would be horrible. Once you got over the pain of the event, more or less, what would you go do? If you haven't figured it out yet, and I have a feeling you already have, let me tell you. You would go find a new woman and go fall in love with her and establish a new serious relationship or marriage with her. My client would have done this. You would do this. I would do this. Everyone would do this. How do I know this? Because more than likely, you have already done this. Not once, but multiple times. Like I've said before, if monogamy actually worked, the vast majority of the population, everyone of all ages, would not only be married, but they'd be married to their high school sweetheart. That would be most people, not a teeny tiny percentage. At various times in your life, you've been with some fantastic girl who you thought was irreplaceable, and then you lost her because she dumped your ass, or she divorced your ass, or she cheated on you, or more likely you cheated on her and got caught, or whatever. Then what did you do? Once you cried and moaned and bitched like a little baby, eventually you got back out there and you found another woman, right? And you fell in love with her and got into a serious relationship with her, or maybe even married her. For many of you, this has even happened to the woman who bore your children. The woman who bore your children left your life and you went and found another woman you fell in love with. So even having your babies isn't indicative of any irreplaceable status, right? So what does this all mean? It means that no one is irreplaceable. And I mean no one. Now, I know that sounds awful. I know that sounds terrible. I know that damages all the Disney fairy tale bullshit society has been programming you with since you were a small child. I know your reptilian brain is going to try to come up with a bunch of bullshit excuses as to why this might be inaccurate. It's still true. You don't understand, Blackdragon. My girlfriend is different. You don't understand, Blackdragon. We've been married for 22 years. Yeah. I've heard it all. It doesn't matter. If that person suddenly died or broke up with you or was abducted by aliens and taken to the planet Bongle, it doesn't matter. You'd go through a mourning period, which admittedly would be tough, and then you'd find someone else. You'd replace that person, and you'd do it even if you are fat, even if you are ugly, even if you're an AFC or beta, even if you're old. Now, of course, if you're in your 80s or 90s, you might not consider it worth it to go out and find a new partner just because of your age, but that's a decision you're making based on your age, not because someone was irreplaceable. My grandmother got remarried. She was about 63, 64, after a 40-year marriage to her husband, my grandpa, who died. So even if you're old, your partner is replaceable. Everyone is replaceable. When you really get that in your head, when you really get that, not only in your head, but in your gut, it opens up a whole new world for you. It changes everything, and it changes everything for the better. Now, I'm not saying you can't love someone. I've been in love many times, and every time it was wonderful. I'm not saying you can't be with someone for many, many years. I'm not saying you can't make commitments to anybody. You can. What I'm saying is that person is still 100% completely and utterly replaceable. The minute you start thinking that any one woman is irreplaceable, you immediately open yourself up to abuse, one-itis, drama, like with my client a minute ago, clinginess, neediness, lack, limitation, mediocrity at best, and unhappiness. Now, that's the conceptual side of all this. Let's get very practical with this now. Let's actually take this down into something very physical and something we can all relate to. Let's talk about this in terms of dating and sex and seduction. I'm going to tell you another story now. I could be wrong. I think I've mentioned this story before, although in a very abbreviated format. I've never really gone into detail about it. So for this story, we're going to go even farther back into my past, well before I was married, all the way back into my early 20s, which is actually, this happened shortly after I lost my virginity because I lost my virginity late. I forget how old I was, but it was somewhere in my early 20s. We're going back almost 20 years now, so my memory is a little hazy on some of the details. But anyway, back then I was a young AFC. I wasn't a raging, horrible AFC, but I was an AFC. I had some level of confidence back then because I was primarily focused on my business, and I was starting to get a little success back then, and that helped. And I also have a naturally confident personality, so that helped out a little bit. So I wasn't a raging off-the-chart AFC, but I was AFC, as you're about to find out. I don't want to sugarcoat this. So I was dating this gal. She was a few years older than me, but she was hot. Oh my God, she was hot. She had a petite, little, fit body, beautiful face, almost like a model. Big, natural tits, even though the rest of her body was very tiny, which is my favorite. You know those kinds of women who are very small and they're very trim, they're really short, but they've got these big, giant tits? Oh, yeah. So anyway, she was like that. Gorgeous, big, deep brown eyes. Not much of an ass, but I overlooked it. Anyway, she was very hot. And in addition, she was very smart, very cool, very corporate. She was a low-level assistant vice president working for a Fortune 500 company. So she was classy. She dressed very nice, great sense of fashion. She was just smoking. Damn, she was hot. I'm going to call her Athena because her real name was actually the name of a Greek goddess. And I'm not kidding. Her name wasn't Athena, but it was similar. So I was dating her, as in going out on dates and spending time with her. And I was in the haze of hardcore one-itis. And man, I thought I had hit the jackpot. I could not believe someone this hot and this smart and this classy and this cool would date little old me. Does that sound a little familiar, gentlemen? So we would hang out and we would make out occasionally, and she was a fantastic kisser. Holy shit, she could kiss. I've kissed a lot of women in my life, and so I know that most women don't kiss very well. So when you find one that does kiss, it's a big event. And even back then, I had very little experience, but even then I could tell, oh my God, she knew how to kiss. She really knew how to kiss. She knew how to use her tongue. My goodness. So anyway, we would kiss and do stuff. And anytime I would try to do anything else beyond kissing, she would stop me. If I suggested that we had sex, or that we would take some clothes off, or if I tried to move my hand to one of her boobies or her butt or any of that fun stuff, she would stop me and give me a little lecture about how I need to slow down and take things slow, and these things happen organically, and we have to take these things one step at a time, blah, 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 chick logic, blah, 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 ASD, la, 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 la. So I would be Mr. AFC Beta and go, oh, yes, okay, oh, you're right, I respect you, I take it slow, absolutely, oh, yes, absolutely. Because she was so hot. I didn't want to piss her off. I didn't want to screw up. Maybe she'd leave me if I screwed up. I didn't want to risk anything. Does that sound familiar? So anyway, went like that for about 6 weeks. 6 weeks of that shit. 6 weeks of dating and going out and spending time together and buying her dinner and buying her lunch and kissing her ass and doing a bunch of girl shit like shopping for candles, all with no sex. None. You know, at one point I even got her over to my house and actually got her over at my house several times, but she spent the night at my house at one point. She ended up sleeping on the couch and I gave her a little blankie to sleep and I got nothing. I was scared to death to sexually escalate because I didn't want to piss her off because she might break up with me. No! Don't break up with me! So after 6 weeks of all this suffering and pain and blue balls, one day I'm on the phone with her and I notice very clearly that she's being very cold, very unlike her, and I wasn't really sure why. So I hung up, and a few days later, I got a letter in the mail from her. This was before the internet and before email, so back then women would actually like write you letters. And I crack open the letter and I read it, and sure as shit, she had just broken up with me. It was a Dear John letter. She was breaking up with me, and she had gone back to her ex-boyfriend who used to treat her like shit. I'm sure that doesn't sound familiar to you at all. I'm sure that's never happened to anyone else other than me. I'm sure I'm very unique. So 6 weeks of being a nice guy and kissing ass and dating right and doing all the right things and being a gentleman and being romantic and doing everything she said she wanted. 6 weeks of that, and I got nothing sexually beyond a few makeouts. No sex, not even a quick titty suck or a blowjob or anything, nothing. That's just fucking great. So fast forward a few weeks after this, and I'm working on this 1-week project for one of my clients with a bunch of other people, and one of them is this really hot blonde chick. The main thing I remember about her, and I'm a pig, yes I am, is her ass. She had like the best ass of any woman I've ever seen, probably in my entire life. I'm exaggerating slightly, but you know what I mean. She'd like bend over a desk and I'd be like, oh my God, I've got to have a piece of that. I mean, this ass was so round, astronomers used it to calibrate their equipment. And on top of that, she was cute and she was fun. She had a great body, seemed like a great gal. She was blonde, which is my favorite, etc. So I have, and I've always had, a hard and fast rule about not dating women I work with. I've talked about this on my blog, www.blackdragon-blog.com. But the great thing about this was a temporary project. It was only about a 1-week thing, and after that, I wasn't going to see any of these people ever again. So it was kind of nice, including her. So on the last day of the project, we were standing out in the parking lot or something, and I summoned up all of my AFC courage, and I very shyly suggested to Blondie that maybe if she wanted, she might want to get a drink with me sometime if she wasn't doing anything else. And to my amazement, she said yes. So fast forward a little bit, we're on a Saturday night, and her and I are hanging out at a bar. I don't remember if we actually ate anything. I remember sitting at the booths with her. But as far as what we ate, I don't think we actually ate. I think we just got drinks, which, by the way, was a harbinger of things to come. Going on a first date and only ordering drinks. Anyway, so I'm sitting there listening to her talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and go on and on, blah, 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 for hours and hours and hours and hours. I'm trying to be a nice guy. I'm trying not to screw this up because she's fucking hot and I don't want to lose her. Oh my God. So after 17 fucking hours of this first date, I'm exaggerating obviously, slightly, or however long it was, we both get back into my car and I drive her back to the parking lot where we met up. And I park the car. We keep talking for a little bit. And I'm listening to her talk and talk and talk and talk. And I just keep doing the same standard AFC stuff. Oh, yeah. You know how you do this? You nod. And you're like, oh, yeah, I love Bed Bath & Beyond. Oh, I love candles. And I love cats and, all that shit, right? So she's talking and talking. And finally, we got to wrap this shit up. It's getting late. So I lean over and I give her a goodnight kiss on the mouth. And she doesn't pull away or anything, which is interesting. So we start making out. And it's good. And so I decide to push the envelope a little bit. And so I put my tongue in her mouth and she lets me. Wow. So I keep going. I move my hand down over her ass, fully expecting her to slap it away and give me a lecture. But nothing happens. My hand's on her ass and I'm squeezing it and she's letting me. What the hell? So I just keep going. And now my hands are on her boobs and on her neck. And even as an AFC, I was a slightly dominant guy, so I kind of take her head and pin it to the back of the little seat cushion, and I start really making out. And within a few minutes, we're going crazy. No clothing comes off, but my hands are all over her. We're going nuts, and she's letting me do everything, and I just can't believe it. I can't believe she's letting me do all this shit. I'm stunned, and I'm very happy, and I'm getting very horny. So I'm getting horny as hell. I can't stand it, and finally, between pants, I pull away from her, and I tell her that she needs to come home with me right now. She then informs me that she can't come home with me because it's only say it with me, guys, it's only the first date. And as every woman knows, particularly those over age 30, with which both of these women were, by the way, if a woman actually has sex with a guy on the first date, oh my God, the tectonic plates will collapse, the sun will go supernova, the world will come to an end, humanity will die, and no one goes to heaven. They all go straight to hell, including the babies. So God forbid a woman has condom sex with a guy on a first date. Perish the thought. Every woman knows this. It's very clear, especially those over 30 types. So I kind of calm down a little bit, and I try to cool off a little bit. And between breaths, I ask her if she wants to hang out tomorrow, if she has some time. And to my shock and awe, she says yes. So we make out again, a little more heavy petting, and I bid her goodnight, and I go home with blue balls. So the next day, we meet up at some cheap restaurant, and we have lunch. I do remember we actually ate, so I bought her lunch, bought her some other stuff. We talked for a little bit, nothing amazing. Shortly, we're back in my car again, we're talking, and then we start making out again, and I start grabbing her again, having fun with her various body parts all over again. Long story short, within about 20 minutes, we're back at her apartment, and we're having sex. And it was fantastic, and she was beautiful. Now, after all that, I go back to my place, very happy, and I ask myself some review questions. One of the things I trained myself to do, I learned this from Brian Tracy, is after doing everything significant, I ask myself two questions. What did I do right, and what could I have done differently? So I sat down and kind of reviewed what it is I did and how it contributed to my level of success. Because I had amazingly gone literally in less than 24 hours. I had gotten more from Blondie, as in all the way to sex, than I had in 6 weeks with Athena. 6 weeks versus 24 hours. So the question I asked, once I asked the initial questions, was, what was the difference between what I did with Blondie and what I did with Athena? What made that key difference? What was the one thing or multiple things that I did that allowed me to have sex within 24 hours versus no sex within 6 weeks. And I sat down and I thought through everything. And I reviewed everything I did with Athena. I reviewed everything I did with Blondie. And finally, I realized the answer. And when I realized the answer, it changed my life forever. This was one of the big turning points in my life when it came to women. There's probably, over the course of my life, and I'm 40, maybe 2 or 3, maybe 4 at the most. I'm guessing 3 big turning points in my life in terms of women and dating and seduction and relationships. And this was the first one and probably the biggest one. When I realized the answer to that question, what I had done differently with Blondie versus Athena, the answer to the question was nothing. I had done nothing different between those 2 women. Nothing at all. It was virtually the identical circumstance. I was the same guy. I was the same nice AFC beta male. I came across as the same gentleman. I used the standard take a girl out to dinner or lunch and cross your fingers technique. I approached both circumstances with a lot of neediness and fear. I was the same guy both times because both of these events happened within a few months of each other. Both women were similar. They were the same age. I think they were 1 year different. They were overaged. I think one was 31, one was 32, or very close to that. They were both good looking. They were both smart, same level of hotness. If anything, Blondie was even better looking because she was blonde, and I tend to like blondes better. Both circumstances were as similar as you could possibly get. Yet one woman had sex with me within 24 hours, and another wouldn't even let me touch her boobs through her shirt after 6 weeks. So what did this all mean? It meant something staggering, which brings us to the point of this entire podcast. It meant that for every woman that says no to reasonably fast sex with you, there is another woman right around the corner from her who is just as hot, just as smart, just as cool as her, who will say yes to you. And that's staggering. It changed everything for me. And many, many times since then, I've proven this right, and you may have proven this right yourself. That's why one-itis doesn't make any sense. That's why things like pursuing that same woman over and over and over again doesn't make any sense. That's why going out on all these dates, one after the next, doesn't make any sense. That's why pursuing that same girl over Facebook or over texts or calling her all the time, on and on and on and on, doesn't make any sense. There's another woman right around the corner from her, sometimes literally, who will say yes to you very quickly, and she will be just as hot, just as smart, just as cool. One of the guys who I tried to emulate and follow in terms of my online dating stuff that I now do, when I first got divorced and started hitting online dating really hard and was developing a system that worked consistently, one of the guys that I modeled for that system was a guy named Paul Janka. And he's, if you don't know who that is, Paul Janka is a hardcore street day game pickup guy in New York. He's a machine. He'll go out for a few hours, collect a bunch of phone numbers, wait a day, text the chicks back. He lays something like 3 to 4 new women a week. I mean, he's crazy. And what I wanted to do was to essentially create the online dating version of Paul Janka. Why do I bring up Paul Janka? Because one of the things he said a long time ago that really struck me was that he'll walk into a bar or any gathering of women, he'll walk up to a really hot chick, he'll open her, he'll start talking, and she'll blow him off really badly and say, ooh, gross, get the fuck out of here. He will then walk 10 feet to another woman who is just as hot as the first one, just as smart, same age, same everything, open her and get a very, very positive response. Because he knows. He knows that for every woman who's going to say no, there's another woman right behind her who will say yes. And this would happen to him literally within a 60-second time frame. I can tell you from my experience that I have been out, especially that first year or two I was experimenting with this system and trying to get good. I would go out on a date with a woman who would kind of give me the runaround. I would go on another date with her. She'd give me the runaround. I'd go on a third date with her. She'd give me a runaround. I'd go on a fourth date with her. She'd give me the runaround. I was still trying to have sex. She was still blowing me off, wanting to spend time with me, wanting to keep going out, but not wanting to have sex. And by the time it was the third or fourth date, I had already met a girl and had sex with her. And literally, by the time it was maybe the third or fourth date with her, after the first date with her, I had already met another woman and had sex with her. So literally, this happened several times. Literally, I would be working with a girl who I would be on date number 4 with. still trying to negotiate to have sex. And I would have already met, like within the prior week, a girl who I had very fast sex with by the second date. And that happened several times. There's no reason to continue to pursue any woman, no matter how cool. I'm going to talk about that again in a little bit, because there's a myth, some of which is probably still embedded in your head, that if a woman... Actually, you know what? Let's talk about this right now. There is a thought process likely in your head, installed by society, and it's something society has been working on shoving into your brain since you were a little boy. And it's something society has been pushing for a very long time, as in perhaps hundreds of years. And that is that if a woman has sex with me quickly, she is not of high quality. There is a myth, and there is a thought process, likely in your brain, somewhere in your brain, that says if a woman has sex with me very quickly, she is not as high quality as a woman who makes me wait a little bit. So for example, if I have sex with a woman on the first date versus another woman who makes me wait 3 or 4 dates, that second woman who made me wait is somehow more enlightened or more classy or more intelligent or more educated or whatever, or more worthy for marriage or a serious relationship. You have that thought process going on in your head, and I can tell you for a fact it's crap. Every guy who's dated a lot of women or slept with a lot of women will tell you that the longest relationships they had, including the marriage that they may have, was from a woman who they had sex with very, very quickly. If a woman has sex with you quickly, that means she's actually more sexually compatible with your desires than a woman who's going to make you wait 5 dates, 10 dates, 3 dates, whatever. That bodes well for a future relationship, not worse. I'll give you another reason this is bad. Let's say a woman makes you wait a long time for sex and you agree to it. That sets a precedent in the relationship that is very, very bad. It sets the precedent that she sets the stage for what happens in the relationship, that she sets the tone of the relationship, that the relationship moves at the speed that she is deciding, not the speed that you are deciding. Believe me, you do not want a relationship like that. And that's one of the primary causes for a lot of relationships failing, is because a man submits to a woman's schedule, so to speak, instead of establishing his own schedule. But you know what? This is all irrelevant. Who cares? If she's making you wait for sex, there's another woman right around the corner from her who is just as high quality as her, who will give you sex very quickly. Why are you wasting your time? Don't be stupid. Let me tell you something. Whenever I'm working on a new woman, trying to have sex, and it is very clear to me that the answer is no or not now, which to me is equivalent to no, because again, there's another woman right around the corner, I'm gone. I'm out of there. I'm nice, I'm polite, but I'm gone. I'm gone. She sees my back walking out the door and she never sees me ever again. Why? Why would I waste my time spending time on her when there's another woman right around the corner who's just as hot, just as high quality as her? Now, when I say when I realize the answer is no or not now, that doesn't mean I suddenly bail as soon as she says no or as soon as I get a little LMR or ASD. Obviously, I persist, and you should too. Clearly, you want to do that. I'm not saying just bail out as soon as you try one thing and she says no. Of course I do that. What I'm saying is when I reach a point where it's very clear to me that the answer is no matter what I do, no or not now, I'm gone. I'm gone, and she never hears from me ever again, and I mean that literally. What is the point? There is no point. Now, of course, for the purpose of this podcast, I'm simplifying this a little bit. There are other mitigating factors. For example, I never try to have I'm talking me now, other guys may disagree with this. I never try to have sex with a woman on a first date. My system, if you're not familiar with it, is go on a first date, usually via an online dating website, go on a very quick, inexpensive, if not free first date that's less than an hour, schedule a second date, go on the second date, and then escalate hard to sex on the second date. So that, just to put that in perspective a little bit, I don't ask women to have sex with me on the first date or within 5 minutes. I don't do that. I don't do that kind of stuff. Other guys in the seduction community do that. Other guys in the dating industry do that. I don't. I wait to the second date. I just make sure that first date is very, very, very brief and very inexpensive. I think my current average for first dates costs me around $11. And about a third, is that right? Yeah, about a third of my first dates cost $0. And all my first dates are less than an hour. I wrap them up. As soon as it hits about 50 minutes, I start wrapping things up because I'm, quote, busy and, quote, gotta go and, quote, have something to do or whatever. And then I escalate on the second date. But that doesn't change anything I'm saying. If on that second date, it's very clear to me that I'm not going to get anywhere with her, boom, I'm gone. One of the big reasons that way back in 2007, when I first got divorced and first started hitting the dating stuff really hard, One of the big reasons that I went from 0 to a reasonably high level of results relatively quickly is because I went into the dating world, even as a very divorced AFC, with this mindset. Because after I got divorced, even though it had been 15 years or 10 years prior, I remembered what had happened between Athena and Blondie. And when I hit the dating sites that first time many, many years ago, I remembered very clearly that some high quality women will say no to me, and some very high quality women will say yes to very fast sex with me. And I knew this going in on every first date that I scheduled. So when it came time to escalate to sex and I got a no problem, I was gone. I did not waste my time. Now that's not completely true. I was about to say I didn't waste my time. There were times that first year where I wasted my time because I got emotional, or because I got one-itis, or because I crossed my fingers, or because I was stupid, or whatever. But most of the time I was pretty good about it. I knew that if some hot chick did not want to have sex with me, no problem. I could go right back home, go right back to Match.com or Plenty of Fish or any of those other sites and bring up a whole bunch of other hot women just as hot as her, just as smart as her, who would have sex with me very quickly. And that happened. I geared my entire dating system around this. One of the things I did, and I've been doing this for years, I stopped doing this about a year ago because I don't need to do it anymore, but one of the things I did starting that year, 2007, was I never scheduled less than 10 first dates. I never scheduled less than 10 because I wanted to be sure that if some woman said no to me, I had another 7, 8, 9, 5, whatever first date scheduled with another bunch of hot women, and I knew at least one of them would say yes. One of my key ratios, my key numbers back then was number of lays per 10 first dates. And when I first started, it was 1. It was 1 to 10, which is very bad. I mean, I got laid, it worked, but it was kind of shitty. I had to spend a lot of time and effort. But I still, even then, I knew if I went on 10 first dates with 10 hot chicks, one of them would have sex with me. I knew this. I knew this going in. So did I care if a woman said no to me? No, because I knew within a few days or maybe a week, there'd be another woman who would say yes. Totally fine. Now, over time, I increased those ratios. I got to 2 out of every 10, and then I got to 3 out of every 10, and then eventually I got to about 4 out of every 10. And then I got to the point, which is kind of where I am now, where the ratios got even higher than 40%, which means I don't even need to schedule 10 dates anymore. Matter of fact, the last online dating blitz I did, I talked about this on my blog too. I scheduled a grand total of 1 first date because my response rate was so low, and I got laid. So that's a 100% ratio for that blitz, even though it was just 1 first date. And not only was she very hot, she was 17 years younger than me. So there you go. But that's the level I'm at now. The point is, even when I was bad at this stuff, and I was bad at it, I knew that for every woman who has said no to me, there was another woman right around the corner. I never got one-itis because it didn't make sense to get one-itis. Now, I'm not saying I didn't get one-itis-ish, one-itis-y. That's when I kind of fucked up, but I never got one-itis. I never lost sight of that reality. I knew that every woman sitting across from me on a first date was replaceable. Replaceable in the respect that there was another woman right around the corner just as good as her who would have sex with me fast. Just as important, or perhaps even more importantly, that did not change if and when I fell in love with her. If I had sex with a particular woman and we developed a relationship and I fell in love with her, which did happen, it's happened more than once, that reality that she was replaceable did not change. I knew, and I still know, that just because I start getting feelings for a woman, or I change my distinctions in my mind about a woman, or even if I fall in love with a woman, that suddenly doesn't make her irreplaceable. She's still replaceable. Why is that? Well, we've already talked about why. If she suddenly vanished out of my life, what would I then go do? I'd find someone else. So would she. It's what people do. Again, let me make it clear. That doesn't mean that you can't fall in love. That doesn't mean that you can't live with a woman. That doesn't mean you can't have children with a woman. That doesn't mean you can't make commitments to a woman. And God forbid, as much as I hate to admit it, that doesn't mean you can't marry a woman under certain conditions. It just means that none of these things change the reality that she's replaceable. Now, if that bothers you, I'm going to give you one final point about this that hopefully will drive this point home. The concept that your partner is always replaceable, women already know this. It's men who are oblivious to this concept. Women already have this down. Women can get laid whenever they want. Even fat women, even ugly women, even older women, they can have sex and get sex whenever they want. They snap their fingers and they got 27 guys, if not more, ready to have sex with them. Go online sometime and see all the emails that these fat chicks get. Doesn't matter. Women can get laid whenever they want, and every woman figures this out by the time she's about 15. They've got that down. That woman that you're trying to pick up at the bar, or that woman who's sitting across from you on that first date, or that girlfriend you now have, or that wife you now have, all of these women know in the back of their mind at any point they can snap their fingers and dump your dumb ass and get another guy, likely just as good if not better than you. If they're staying with you, they're staying for other emotional reasons or other logistical reasons like you have kids together or whatever. But they know, and they have never forgotten, that they can dump your ass whenever they want and upgrade you because you are replaceable. That woman that you think is irreplaceable, she doesn't think that about you, even if she loves you. That's how women work. They already know this stuff. That's why this podcast is not directed towards women, because women already know. I hate to break that to you, but it's true. So, if you're currently in dating or seduction mode, please remember that if a woman has given you a clear no or not now, if you're still pursuing her, you're a dumbass. You're wasting your time. Drop her and move on and find someone else, and guess what'll happen? You'll get laid. If you're in a relationship, especially a serious relationship, and she starts screaming at you or bitching at you, or she's regularly giving you drama or giving you all kinds of rules and regulations and bullshit, and you're putting up with it because you think she's irreplaceable, you're a dumbass. Matter of fact, you're a bigger dumbass than the guy who's trying to fuck that girl who won't fuck him, because you have a much more permanent problem with this wife or girlfriend who's throwing drama at you. At least the guy who isn't getting laid can do whatever the hell he wants. You can't, because you've got that dramatic wife or dramatic girlfriend that you think incorrectly is irreplaceable. Do not waste your time. Don't waste your life. Be a man. Live the life that you want. Stop screwing around with this stuff. Women are replaceable. They know that about you. You should know that about them. If I've pissed you off, good. Anger causes change. Maybe you need some of that. That music means I've got to go. I need to go have sex with some replaceable women. I will do another podcast very, very soon, I promise. Until then, have fun and stay strong.